everybody. Welcome to today's webinar about the Texas ABLE program. Like Dina said, this is Laura Whitekittle. I'm the Outreach and Operations Manager at DSACT. Today's presenter and ABLE expert is Anna Mallett. Anna has worked with the Texas Comptroller's Office for 10 years and currently serves as the Outreach Specialist for Texas's ABLE program. She previously worked as a marketing coordinator for the Texas Tuition Promise Fund and has over 19 years of service with the state of Texas. She holds a BA in Communications and Business from Southwest Texas State University. I encourage you to submit your questions throughout the webinar, and Anna will answer them as we transition between topics. And then also there will be some time at the end of the presentation for questions and answers. And now I'll turn it over to Anna so we can get started.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Dina. Really, thank you to the Down Syndrome Association of Central Texas for really giving me this opportunity today to tell you guys a little bit about a new program that we have called Texas ABLE. As Laura mentioned, I am an outreach specialist for the program, and so I am an employee of the Texas Comptroller's Office, which is a state agency here in Austin, and we are actually charged with administering the program. So my job is to travel around the state and talk to folks about Texas ABLE and let them know all the ins and outs and kind of details of how it works and how to enroll and such. So I'm really excited to be able to tell you all about it today. So here's kind of what I plan on covering. I'll start off and just kind of tell you a little bit about the story of Texas, or of ABLE itself, where it came from on the federal level, just to kind of familiarize you with that. And then I'll go into some just basics of ABLE, how it works, and then roll into Texas ABLE and talk a little bit specifically about opening an account with Texas ABLE, contributing and using your account. As Laura mentioned, feel free to ask questions kind of as you move through, and Laura will let me know if there's any questions, and I'll do my best to answer them along the way. I will tell you that most likely the question that you have, it's going to be answered in the next slide or two, and then certainly we can at the end follow up with some Q&A, and I'll do my best to answer any questions that you guys have. Before I get started, and really whether I'm talking to a parent over the phone or making a formal presentation, I always let folks know that we have attorneys that work in our office, and our attorneys tell us, hey, we have to let folks know that the information that we're going to be providing to you today there is some information on investments, and as Texas ABLE and ABLE accounts in general are savings accounts, but they're also investment accounts. So I have to let you know right up front that I am not an attorney or a financial advisor, so I can't give that kind of advice to you. So that's my disclaimer in the very beginning. So a little bit about the Federal ABLE Act and kind of where it came from. Many of you may be familiar. If not, I'll tell you a little bit about it. The Federal ABLE Act was actually enacted back in 2014 under the Obama administration, and it basically it was named after a gentleman named Stephen Beck. And Stephen Beck was a disability in the community, and he also had a daughter with special needs. He was very, very active in the community and really pushed to have this piece of legislation passed. And literally kind of how it came about was he, along with some other parents of children with special needs, were sitting around a kitchen table one night and talking about long-term strategies for their children and kind of how are we going to be able to save. And so they pushed and they lobbied to have this piece of legislation passed called the ABLE Act. ABLE stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience. And so what this legislation did was it basically created a new savings option for individuals with disabilities, right? So it created a savings tool for them, allowing them and their families to save money in a tax-advantaged account, use those monies for disability-related expenses, what we call qualified disability expenses, and keep their eligibility for public benefit. I mean, in a nutshell, that's really what the piece of legislation did. It truly was a game changer for the way individuals with disabilities can save for the future, really for now and for the future. I will tell you, so what this means is the monies that are in a Texas ABLE account in this new savings options are not countable resources when it comes for SSI determination purposes. And there are some exceptions, and I'll talk to you a little bit about those in just a moment, but generally they are not counted for as a resource for SSI determination purposes. And so what that means is your family member or you are currently receiving SSI and Medicaid or will be in the future at transition time for your child, those monies in your ABLE account will not be counted as a resource. So that's very, very important. Another thing that the piece of legislation did was it actually created a new section in the tax code. It created a 529A, which stands for ABLE. You may be familiar with the 529 programs. They're college savings accounts, and those monies are to be spent for, they're also tax-advantaged accounts, and they're to be spent for higher education expenses. So a 529A is almost like it's a sister account to the 529. So they work very similar. So it created that new section. Another thing that it did was it authorized the states to begin opening their own ABLE program. So the only way you can enroll in an ABLE program or have an ABLE account is to enroll through the state. So there are 40 plus states that are open now with ABLE accounts or with ABLE programs, and Texas launched theirs last year in May of 2018. So we are rolling up on our 1-year anniversary. Very, very cool. So the Texas ABLE program, and really the Texas ABLE piece of legislation was actually passed in 2015 by our Texas legislature, and it is administered through the Texas Comptroller's office. Again, we launched last year in May. We also do a number of things within our office, you know, collecting the state taxes and all that fun stuff, but we also manage the state's 529 college savings account. So that's the business that we're in, and now we are managing the state's 529A Texas ABLE account. Talking a little bit about Texas or ABLE in general, really what is an ABLE account? So I mentioned earlier that an ABLE account is a savings account, right? It's an investment account designed for eligible individuals with disabilities. Now, these are your own private funds, okay? So they're intended to supplement and not supplant benefits that may be provided through Medicaid or SSI, SSDI, or any private insurance that you may have. So these are your own private savings accounts in addition to other benefits that you may receive or may be receiving in the future. It's important to know that there is only one ABLE account per beneficiary. That means as other states, you cannot have an ABLE account in Ohio and have one in Texas. And we'll talk about ways if you do have one or you've opened one in another state, ways that you can roll it back to Texas if that's something that you want to do. We will certainly help you out with that, but only one account per beneficiary. So really the game changer behind ABLE and the reason why Stephen Beck and his friends lobbied to have this piece of legislation passed was before ABLE, families couldn't save over $2,000 in resources, right? Or they would risk losing their health care and really their other benefits and being and so after ABLE, now they can save much, much more than the $2,000. Actually, it's going to be up to $15,000 a year that individuals can put in their ABLE account and still keep those benefits. So who can benefit from the account? Individuals that have with disabilities who can manage or who can and would like to manage their account. These may be working individuals who want to contribute money into their account. They can certainly benefit from an ABLE account. And then again, parents, guardians, or just in general families can really save long term for when they're no longer around. So that's a key audience who can benefit from an ABLE account. So benefits of having the ABLE account, obviously it's creating a financial independence that individuals with disabilities have not been able to have before. Saving above $2,000 long term is a big deal. The tax benefits, these earnings on these accounts, as they're investment accounts, they grow tax-free, right? If you're using these for disability-related expenses, and I'll talk about, we'll talk about the definition of what that is in just a moment. The account ownership, the beauty of ABLE is you can open an account, you can maintain control, you manage how the funds go in and how the funds go out. And also, the control as far as who's owning the account. The individual with a disability owns the account. That's the way the piece of legislation was written on the federal level, and that's the beauty behind it. So they actually get to own the account, whether they manage it by themselves or whether they have someone else manage it. They own the account by law. So the eligibility requirements, there are some requirements, and these are all based, most of them are based on the federal legislation. The only difference for Texas is you have to be a Texas resident in order to open a Texas ABLE account, so that's important to know. But really the eligibility requirements are as follows. The disability has to have occurred before the age of 26. That's the way the law was written. In addition to that age requirement, if the individual receives or is entitled to receive benefits through SSI or SSDI, and they meet the age requirement, they can open an ABLE account. If not, they can obtain a physician's diagnosis with the disability showing that it occurred before the age of 26. The way the law was written, the physician's diagnosis has to basically contain what they call a determinable physical or mental impairment. The law reads that it's going to result in marked or severe limitations expected to result in death, or has lasted or is expected to last at least 12 months. So that's the way the definition is written in the piece of legislation. If they do not have the physician's diagnosis or they are not eligible for SSI or SSDI, there is a list that the Social Security Administration maintains called the List of Compassionate Allowances. And that is basically a list of certain conditions and illnesses that they're constantly updating. And it can be found on their website. If the individual were to have one of those conditions, they would be eligible to open an ABLE account. So I talked earlier about the account by law. They certainly could open it if they are a resident, they're 18 years of age, they can open it and manage it on their own. Or they can authorize what we call an authorized legal representative to open the account and manage it on their behalf, right? So that would be a parent, a guardian, or what we call an other fiduciary. So that would be a power of attorney. We do have a power of attorney form on our website, and I will show you that in just a moment. But that is it's a legal document, basically authorizing an individual to be able to act on behalf of that eligible individual with disability, and it's only to be used for Texas ABLE purposes. So that we do have a template on our website if you're interested in taking a look at that. I'm using all of these terms: eligible individual with disability, owner of the account, designated beneficiary. This is all the same person. So I may use them very loosely, but just wanted to clarify that. So how much can you contribute to an ABLE account? I said in the beginning that you can contribute up to $15,000 a year in an ABLE account. And that's based on that piece of federal legislation. That's actually the gift tax exclusion rate for the federal, on the federal level. And in 2018 or 2019, it's $15,000. So that means that all contributions combined cannot exceed $15,000 in that ABLE account in one taxable year. So that's monies from the individual with a disability, that's grandma, grandpa who may want to put in, that maybe a special needs trust might want to put money in, the individual may be working and wants to put money in. All contributions combined cannot exceed that $15,000. Now, there was a piece of legislation passed called the Able to Work Act. And what that did was it basically created an opportunity for working individuals who have ABLE accounts to be able to save above the $15,000 a year. And so since that piece of legislation passed, it allows those individuals to be able to save up to $27,140 per year, and that's based on that. So those are specific to working ABLE beneficiaries can contribute above and beyond the $15,000. Now the lifetime limit for just to have the Texas ABLE account, the contribution limit is going to be $370,000. So that's the most you can contribute to the account in Texas, and that's based on the 529 contribution limit here in Texas. Okay, so this is a really important slide. This is probably my most important slide. So what I tell folks here, and what this is saying is there are some important considerations you want to know and let it be known as far as how much money you can put in your account and still receive SSI benefits. And so what this says is in your ABLE account, when your ABLE account, the monies in your ABLE account reach $100,000, if the individual is receiving monthly cash benefits or SSI, those monthly benefits, when the account reaches $100,000, those monthly benefits are temporarily suspended. So those, the cash benefits are temporarily suspended until that account falls back under the $100,000. So that's very, very important to know for folks who are receiving that monthly benefit. Now, this is really important to know also because often, if not all the time, SSI comes hand in hand with Medicaid. So Medicaid benefits always remain, even when that account reaches $100,000 and goes above and beyond. Those Medicaid benefits continue to remain. So that's very, very important to know. Impact on countable income. What that means, what that's saying here is, if the individual is working and contributing to their ABLE account, it's still considered earned income for SSI determination purposes. So, they still have to fall within those limitations to qualify for SSI. That's important to know as well. So what expenses can you pay from an ABLE account? I mentioned in the beginning that the accounts are designed to pay for qualified disability expenses. And so the way the law was written, it basically says these are expenses that are for the benefit of that individual with a disability, and that are used for maintaining the health, independence, or quality of life for that individual. Okay, that's a very, very broad statement, but that's the way the law is written. These include basic living expenses, and so these are not just to be used for medical purposes, right? So this is housing, food, clothing. These are basic living expenses, very, very broad categories of expenses. I have here showing some categories we've provided for you. The IRS is the one ultimately that determines what would be considered a qualified disability expense and whether it's qualified or non-qualified. But these are just general categories of what could be considered a disability expense. So you'll see here education, housing, transportation, just to name a few. Basically, at the end of the day, if you can make the case and you can tie it to the benefit of that individual, and you have your records that you've maintained, you can certainly that's the way that you would basically qualify it as a disability expense. I'll talk about just a little bit more about that in just a moment. Now, another portion of the federal legislation was there is a Medicaid payback provision that applies to the ABLE programs in general, but also the Texas ABLE program. And what this says is, it says that in the event the individual with the disability were to pass away, that the state has the authority to come ask for those particular funds paid by Medicaid for that individual from basically lifetime, from the time the ABLE account was open, right? Not the lifetime of the individual, just from the time the ABLE account was open. So now, that's after any outstanding disability-related expenses need to be paid. So these are medical bills, any sort of expenses that you have outstanding, you can pay those. If you've paid into the Medicaid system, you can deduct any premiums that you may have paid as well. And then funeral and burial expenses are also considered a qualified disability expense. So you could certainly deduct those expenses as well. So once those bills have been paid, deducting any premiums as well as funeral and burial, then the state has the authority to come ask for any funds paid by Medicaid during the time that ABLE account was open, right? Now, if the individual is not receiving Medicaid, obviously this payback provision doesn't apply to you. But that is another important part of the legislation that we always let folks know that pertains to the ABLE account. So talking a little bit about Texas ABLE, I've kind of gone through the nuts and bolts of ABLE and how it works. Now I'm going to give you just some general information about Texas ABLE and how to find more information. On your screen here, you'll see this is a screenshot of our website, of our homepage of our website. And I'm showing this to you because this is where it's really going to be your one-stop shop for Texas ABLE. This is where you're going to go find all of the information that I'm talking about, and then some. All the forms that we're going to talk about. We'll have our frequently asked questions. There's an eligibility quiz as well, just about 6 or 7 questions to take to see if the individual is eligible for to open an ABLE account. But also, very important, this is where you're going to enroll in the program, and this is where you're going to go to access your account, texasable.org. So again, I mentioned in the beginning that these are run through state funds or state administered programs through the Comptroller's office. So you can't really go to a Wells Fargo and ask to open a Texas ABLE account. The only way you can do it here is through texasable.org. So opening an account is really a fairly simple process through our online system. It takes probably 20 minutes. Obviously, you're going to need some identifying information for yourself and the beneficiary. It does not cost to enroll in the program, but when you do make your first contribution, it is a $50 minimum contribution. It is a self-certification process. Now, what that means is, that when you're going through and creating the account, you're basically, at the end of it, you're going to check a box saying, you know, I am who I am, the beneficiary is who they are, the disability has occurred before the age of 26, and you've met XYZ requirements. And so what that means is you don't have to upload any information to us. You're able to do it via the online system very easy. It's very, very simple and very easy. Now, when you go online and you're actually creating the ABLE account, during that process, you'll get to choose your investment options, right? And so that's going to be the way you want the account, your money's in the account to be invested. And I'll talk about that in just a moment, but that is an important, that is an option that you'll get to do through, opening the account online. So investment options. This is, I remember my disclaimer in the beginning, and I talked about how I'm not a financial advisor. So this is where we get into talking about securities and stocks and bonds. And so the information here that you see on this slide are the investment options for the Texas ABLE program. So when you're going through that online process and you get to the select investment options section, you'll get to decide how you want those monies invested. You have 4 options. The first 3 options that you see are in this multicolored, pie chart. These are what we call managed allocation options. So these are risk-based. They're based on the market. They have the potential to make money over time and lose money over time, depending on, the options that you select. The 4th option is a SDIC insured bank savings option. So what that is a option that allows you to put your money in and ensure that it is FDIC insured up to the $250,000 in that account. Now, when you make that determination online of how you want your investments set up, you can decide you want to put everything, for example, in the aggressive allocation, or you could put it all in your bank savings option, or you could, divide it up and do 25% in each, basically option or different bucket of investment. So that's the beauty of the program. You can decide based on your risk level, your situation. We find some people put money in and they never touch it, and they leave it, and it has the potential, based on the market, to grow over time. Now, we do see some people that are putting money in and taking money out, using it every month for disability-related expenses. So it can be used in a different ways for every situation is going to be a little bit different. So when it's time to make a contribution to the account, as I mentioned, it's all via the online system. Different ways that you can put money in. You can write a personal check or a cashier's check. You can set up a payroll deduction to actually have all or a portion of a payroll go directly into that ABLE account. You can set up automatic recurring contributions. So you could say every quarter I want to put in $500, or every month I would like to put in, $1,000, depending on how much you're wanting to put in the account over time. It's flexible for that reason. These are electronic fund transfers. So these are directly from a checking account, a savings account, directly electronically transferred into that ABLE account online. Very important for folks that have 529 college savings account. That was a piece of legislation that was 529 college savings account into an ABLE account, which is a really, really big deal for folks who have set up 529 accounts and not being able to use them for the purposes that they wanted to or intended to use them for, they can now roll over into a Texas ABLE program, or excuse me, an ABLE program in general, but obviously a Texas ABLE program. Keeping in mind that that rollover amount can only be the $15,000 contribution per taxable year. So you would have to, make, work with your 529 provider to make that rollover. There is a form on our website to complete a rollover. If you guys are interested in that, you can certainly reach out to me after, and I'm happy to walk you through the process. We also have an online gift tool on via our platform online. So what this is it's basically once an account's set up, the individual who is managing the account can actually go in and send out an email to family or to friends, basically sending out a message saying, hey, it's my birthday, or hey, I'm saving for this expense. Would you like to make a contribution to my ABLE account? So it's a secure way for contributions to be made to that account. So that was a pretty cool feature of that online system. So the withdrawals from the ABLE account, I mentioned they go in online and they also come out online. So working within that system online, you'll go in, you can actually request a paper check if you'd like. It does take 7 to 10 business days, or you can certainly initiate an electronic withdrawal. That one also takes 3 to 5 business days. Now there are these time frames involved because remember, these are investment accounts. So there's some record keeping that has to be done behind the scenes in order for those monies to be transferred out. So when you do that, you can actually even transfer it to your personal checking or your personal savings account and use your own debit card to pay for those disability-related expenses. The online system also has an online bill pay that allows you to set up vendors, and you can actually pay your vendor directly from your ABLE account. So if you have a certain cell phone provider or a medical bill that you want to pay, you can do that and set it directly from that ABLE account. We are working really hard, and I expect it to happen very, very soon, to launch a debit card as part of the Texas ABLE program, which is a really, really cool deal. And so what this debit card will offer or allow is it's going to be a prepaid debit card. So you'll be able to pull out money from your ABLE account, load it onto your debit card, and then use that debit card to pay for those disability-related expenses. Now, the debit card option has a pretty extensive record-keeping aspect to it as well, so you'll be able to categorize your expenses. It even has an option to where you can upload receipts as well. So be on the lookout for that to come in the very, very near future. So talking about withdrawals from the account, this is important to know. So remember I said that the withdrawals from the account are intended to be used for qualified disability-related expenses. So at the end of the day, for auditing purposes, if it is ever determined by the IRS that a withdrawal was made from your Texas ABLE account or your ABLE account, and it is considered a non-qualified withdrawal, meaning it wasn't used for qualified expenses related to the disability, you do have to pay income taxes on the earnings for that distribution, and then also a 10% tax on the earnings. So it would be just like making a non-qualified withdrawal on like a 529 account. And again, the beneficiary or the authorized legal rep, whoever's managing it, is responsible for determining if these are non-qualified or qualified and maintaining all of the records. That's very, very important for just record-keeping purposes. We are not in the business within the state to approve what you're using your money for. That's the beauty of it. You can use it how you want. and access it and make withdrawals as you need. So there is no approval process. You're in charge and in complete control of the ABLE account. Housing withdrawals. So I included this slide here because it's important to know that you can pay for housing expenses from your ABLE account, which is a really big deal because they're now remember, the ABLE account is owned by the individual with the disability, right? So you can actually pay for their housing expense through your ABLE account. Now, housing expenses include mortgage, taxes, rent, electricity, utilities, that kind of thing. I point out this whole slide on housing withdrawals because the Social Security Administration makes a really big deal about housing. And so what they say is if you're going to make a withdrawal for a housing expense, you have to make the withdrawal from the ABLE account and pay for that expense in the same month, okay? So that money cannot be retained in your account the following month, or it becomes a countable resource, right? And so that's very, very important. They make this determination and a stipulation just for housing withdrawal. So you have to pull the money out and pay for the housing expense during the same month. Okay, just really a recap kind of what we talked about as far as contributions. Remember, it's $50 for that minimum contribution. I didn't mention this earlier, but it is a $25 subsequent minimum contribution to $15,000 for contribution limit for all sources combined for non-employee beneficiaries, the $27,000 for those who are working and qualified to have that additional contribution limit. The $100,000, that was the important threshold for the SSI monthly cash benefits. And then the $370,000 is going to be, remember, the maximum for the contribution limit. Now, to have a Texas ABLE account, there are fees involved. So in order to have the account in general, it's a $4 a month fee. So it's a $48 yearly fee to have the account. There are some various other fees involved. If you want to have paper delivery of your program documents or returned item fees, there are fees for that as well. I will tell you, as far as accessing your account, you can go online at any time, look at your account, see what monies have gone in, see what monies have come out, so you can get those statements via that online system electronically. There are fees for processing a check from the account. So remember, they're investment accounts, so there's record keeping that has to be done. It is a $5 fee per withdrawal by check. So you want to keep that in mind. And then with that $48 yearly fee, or the $4 a month fee, you are allotted 2 ACH processing fees, right? So that means you can make 2 ACH withdrawals from that ABLE account per month. And anything above that, you would have to pay $1 per transaction. So that's important to keep in mind, and kind of, planning ahead as far as what you're going to be using your money on, and go ahead and have it taken out accordingly. Also, that debit card will help with that ACH processing fee as well. So you could just load it onto that debit card. So you definitely want to keep that in mind. There are no fees for enrollment. Obviously, enrolling in the account, rollovers from another plan. So if you do have that account in another state, we encourage you to come back to Texas, and we'd love for you to, and can help you do that. And then, if you do have a 529 account, you can certainly roll that over into the ABLE account as well. All right, so just getting started, I kind of circle back to our homepage of our website, texasable.org. On our website, there's a program disclosure statement that and regs behind the program. Any questions that you have, you can find in that booklet. The eligibility quiz, you'll want to gather the necessary information, and then click on that big green enroll button there to get started. I will leave you now with some resources that, I like. These are all on our website, so you can find these links there as well. But I like to share these with folks because these are really important. What these are the rules and regs behind the program, and these are the rules and regs on the way the Social Security Administration treats ABLE accounts, the way Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services they treat ABLE accounts, the IRS, the way they treat ABLE accounts. So these are they're basically their policies and procedures for their employees on the way that they treat ABLE accounts and the way we coordinate together. So there's going to be a link for the Texas ABLE Act. So obviously you can go on there and find a link to our legislation if you want to read about that. And then that final link there is going to be the Texas State Securities Board. They have a really good website for investors. So if you wanted to kind of learn investing 101, I encourage you to visit that site as well. And finally, just I wanted to let you, obviously, as I mentioned in the beginning, I am in charge of the outreach, so I'm out talking to folks about the program all the time. So if you have any opportunities, events, or presentations that or others that you may want to share this information with, feel free to reach out to me. You can email me or call me, and I will certainly answer any questions that you have and get any other opportunities set up. But we do have a customer service team that it's a 1-800 number. They're Monday through Friday, and all they do is talk about Texas ABLE. So you can call them and ask them for clarification on anything here that you may need a little bit more information on. Obviously, you can certainly contact me as well, but they're a really good resource as well for any assistance that you may have in enrolling or any additional questions that you may have. And I'll leave you with my final disclosure of the day, and that's going to be it for me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and tell you a little bit about the program, and I hope I didn't bore you guys to death. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have asked along the way. Laura, is there any questions that you have that you'd like me to take a stab at?
Sure, we do have a couple of questions. So first one, what is being planned to make sure that the amount a person with a disability can save grows in line with regular cost of living increases?
Okay, and so if I'm understanding the question, you're asking about the investment options and are they like predetermined based on risk level and that kind of stuff? Is that can you read the question one more time just to make sure I got it right?
Sure. I think they're referring to the 15,000 or the 27,000.
I got it. Yeah. Sure.
But if this is your question, go ahead and ping me if that's wrong. But the question was, what is being planned to make sure that the amount a person with a disability can save grows in line with regular cost of living increases?
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Well, what I can tell you is I mentioned that $15,000 is tied to that gift tax exclusion rate. And so that is set via that piece of legislation. So it will likely increase over the years. I will tell you in 2014, it was a $14,000 annual contribution limit, or in 2015, excuse me. But it has increased to the 15,000. So more than likely it will increase a bit over time.
Okay.
That's something that was set by that federal level.
All right. And then the next one, if you open in Texas and have an account, then move to another state, can you keep the account or do you need to roll over to the new state?
You would have, that's a great question as well. Yes, you would have to roll it over to a state that accepts out-of-state residents. There are several of them that do, and the reason why is because the way our program is set up, you have to be a Texas resident. So you would lose, basically, if you moved out of state, you would lose that residency requirement, and then so you would need to roll it to another state. We'd hate to see you go, but unfortunately, that's the way that the program, you'd have to roll it over.
Okay, next question. Can a survivorship life insurance policy payout be deposited into an ABLE account?
You could make a contribution from anyone, an insurance policy, any sort of trust, but it could not go over the $15,000 contribution. It would have, you would have to, it'd have to be liquidated, and you could make that contribution, but it could not go over the $15,000. And you'd want to talk with your financial advisor on that one as well, just, to confirm. But I do know that a trust or any source of, can make that contribution into that account. It just applies to that contribution limit of $15,000.
Okay. We have two questions about mortgages. Can I pay for a mortgage with ABLE account if the beneficiary is a minor?
Yes, you certainly could, because the way the program is designed, you would be paying, even though the individual with a disability owns the account by law and they're a minor, they're paying for their own housing expense through that ABLE account. So you could put the housing expense, family could pay into the ABLE account and then pay for that housing expense out of the ABLE account, which is for the sole benefit for that individual with a disability that's benefiting that individual, and that you could pay for it through that. Yes.
Okay. Next question, is autism a qualifying disability?
Again, I'm not in the business of saying whether it is or whether it isn't. I would imagine that if you could meet the eligibility requirements, the Texas residency, and then have that physician's diagnosis, then certainly that individual would be eligible to open the account. Yes, meeting that eligibility requirements that we spoke of, or that I mentioned in the very beginning about the severe and marked limitation.
All right. The other question related to rent or mortgage is, if rent or mortgage is due early in the month, are there any strategies to draw funds from the ABLE account to pay for the expense in the same month?
That's a great question. I don't know. I don't really have an answer for that one, other than you just want to make sure that you've considered those electronic transfer timeframes of the 3 to 5 days, and whether you're going to pay for it obviously out of your own personal or a check or even a debit card. So you just want to make sure you've got those timeframes in your planning process to be able to make sure it's paid in that same month.
All right. Two more. Are there any changes that you know of proposed to ABLE in the current legislative session?
Yes, actually, there is a piece of legislation out there called the Able Age Adjustment Act, and disability advocates are looking to increase that eligibility age limit from the 26 up to 46. So that is actually currently pending right now on the federal level.
Okay, and last question, is there any possibility of a future funding option that is a 100% index fund, like a Vanguard's total stock market index?
Right. Well, I will tell you that those predetermined, as I saw the 4 different options, those are set by the Higher Education Tuition Board and the Comptroller. And so those are the same portfolios that we use for our 529 college savings plans. And so we have an investment consultant and a bunch of really smart people that put together these portfolios. And so that is certainly something that they're always watching and could at any point make changes to in the future. So I don't have the crystal ball to be able to tell you, yes, that could happen, but that is certainly something that they can look at for future needs.
Okay, two more questions came in. One is, can I start an ABLE account for my child here in Texas and then grandparents have an account for him in another state?
No, no. You can only have one account per beneficiary at any time. Yeah, that's
okay.
a requirement of the federal ledge.
And then there's a question about a form. I'm not sure where this is coming from, but the question is there a standard form for doctor for the following? Has a written diagnosis from a licensed physician that the individual has a medically determinable physical or mental impairment that results in marked and severe limitations. So I guess something that was referenced or that's on the website for ABLE maybe?
Right. We do not, and I believe the question they're asking for, is there a form, basically a template for the doctor to complete? We do not provide a form for that. And what I tell folks is, the physician's diagnosis, it could, be in the form of a letter, just stating those specific requirements in that letter. But we do not have a form available for that purpose.
Thank you for everybody for coming today. If you have any other questions, you can feel free to call or email me. And then Anna also provided her contact information within the PowerPoint on the webinar, which you'll get again today. We look forward to doing this again with more topics and speakers. Thank you all so much for your time. And thank you, Anna, for your expertise today. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.